Why do so many Jews and the Jewish people suffer so much? Why does it seem that there's always some sort of strife? Is it a divine retribution for rejecting their Messiah? Or perhaps a wake-up call to unite and come together and bring them to the Torah of their fathers? Today, on the Exodus Project, we examine the role of the suffering servant and ultimately end the Isaiah 53 debate.
Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of the Exodus Project. I'm your host, Steve Eisenhower. We've had a bit of a break. I just had my birthday. Real busy in the wood shop, real busy at work. Staying on top of it, doing a lot of excellent research. Stuff I can't wait to share with you guys. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Talking about the origins of Christianity. Very, very interesting stuff. Also, working on 2 books, one of which shares the same name as this, Ending the Isaiah 53 Debate, going to do a full, deep analysis. A lot of the same information as these lectures, but of course some stuff that won't be in these lectures as well, of course. So be on the lookout for that. Have a post-Christian Noachide devotional called The Other Side. It's going to be featuring some chapters from some very prominent names in the movement. My good friend Luann Hunt, Rabbi Stuart Federow is authoring an introduction. We have Dan Barwell, my friend Adam, other people who show up on the channel. It's going to be great, going to be incredible. And if you are just leaving Christianity or have left Christianity a while ago, or are in the healing process and trying to come back to religion, find where you belong as far as religion goes and acceptance with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, this will be the perfect resource for you. Daily means of motivation and hearing it from other people that may have been in your situation and truly understanding that we know how you feel. And one more, I'm working on a book called Paul the Undercover Antiochus. That's also somewhat in the realm of Christian origins, Paul's origins, the Hellenized worldview of the day, and so on. And also, like always, the Christian coloring book is still available. If you'd like the free ebook, please shoot me an email at rediscoveringgod22@gmail.com. If you want a physical copy, that link is in the description, as well as many other resources such as Rabbi Stuart Federow's book, Rabbi Singer's books, etc. All in the description of the video will be in this description as well. But before I get started, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, give me a big thumbs up, and let's delve into it. This is our 3rd installment of Ending the Isaiah 53 Debate. It's been rather popular thus far, and this one's going to be a bit more comprehensive, a bit more deep information, and really some word analysis of what's going on in the chapter and what did Isaiah mean, right? So let's hop right into it. So let's preface this by saying, can the suffering servant only be Jesus? Jeremiah 11:19 reads, "But I was like a gentle lamb brought to the slaughter, and I knew not that they had devised plans against me, saying, Let us destroy the tree with its fruit, and let us cut him off from the land of the living, that his name may be no more remembered." Okay, so this verse is very interesting. If you're acquainted with the wording of Isaiah 53, you'll find a lot of similarities here. So for this first example, Jeremiah describes himself, one, as a lamb, which is led to the slaughter, and the plotters intend to cut him off from the land of the living. The same vocabulary, the exact same vocabulary, is used in Isaiah 53. But Christian sources, Christian apologists, etc., will never say that this is about the Messiah. Right? So we have parallel language showing that a suffering servant, someone who suffers, someone who is a lamb led to slaughter, someone who will be cut off from the land of the living. And we're actually going to delve into what that exactly means. It's not wording that's exclusive for the Messiah. Okay? And we're going to dig into those. But that just goes to show that the things that they say are so explicit about Jesus being the Messiah, and, that's the hill they die on, right? Is Isaiah 53. They all love that chapter. They say it's explicit, couldn't be anybody else. But here we have Jeremiah utilizing the exact same words and the exact same language about himself. So Ezekiel 4:4 will be our next citation, and it reads, this is God speaking, it says, "Lie upon your left side, and lay the iniquity of the house of Israel upon it. According to the number of the days that you shall lie upon it, you shall bear their iniquity." Okay, so we're seeing that someone other than Jesus can bear Israel's sins. The whole core teaching of the church that Isaiah 53 is exclusive, right? It could only be Jesus. Only he could bear the iniquities of a sinful world, of the sinful nation of Israel, is debunked here. By Ezekiel being told by God, right? I don't think they would say Ezekiel is not a prophet. I don't think any Christian would say that. And he's being told explicitly from God that he should lay on his side, and the suffering that he accrues from lying on this side for that long will be a bearing of Israel's iniquity, whatever contextually that exactly means. But we're just using the same language as Isaiah 53 to prove that even from their point of view, Isaiah 53 doesn't work. And it can't be something exclusive. Okay? Verse 5, "For I have laid upon you the years of their iniquity according to the number of the days, 390 days. So shall you bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. And when you have completed them, lie again on your right side, and you shall bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have appointed you a day for each year." Okay, so, very, I want to say cryptic, but quite peculiar, quite odd thing going on here. But the takeaway is that prior to this, Ezekiel makes a metaphorical diorama of the siege of Jerusalem, and that he must endure the iniquities of the people by lying on his sides. The prophecy of exile follows thereafter, which is very interesting, right? This is extremely interesting what Ezekiel is doing. He's basically being used as a metaphor to show what is going to be happening to the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Very interesting stuff. Also, Daniel 9 states that the second Commonwealth's destruction is used to atone for iniquity. So as we're seeing here, simply the sins of the world, the iniquities of the world, of Israel, etc., aren't just born, right? They aren't being only born by Jesus, only could be Jesus, has to only be Jesus. Because we're seeing, identical language and identical ideas being proposed upon someone else. And as I said, I'm kind of leaning into their interpretation of what bearing iniquities means. Of course, I understand that it's a means to come to repentance, and that personal suffering is a means of tikkun, right? Of repairing oneself. But at the same time, I want to lean into how Christians understand bearing iniquity, and show that even other people, other prophets, etc., are being used in that same language, and that same idea is being applied to them. Okay, so the next citation, Zephaniah 3:13, the remnant of Israel shall not do iniquity nor speak lies, nor shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth, for they shall feed and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. So, finally, in this preface, can the suffering servant only be Jesus? It outright states, with the same language of Isaiah 53, that the righteous remnant of Israel will have no deceit in their mouth. Zephaniah labels those who have no deceit in their mouth, who are led and lay down, right, before their shears, etc. We saw that same idea in Jeremiah 11, but that those without the deceit are in fact the remnant of Israel. David describes the righteous remnant. Okay, so we're going to read from Psalm 44, starting at verse 10. But you have cast off and put us to shame, and you do not go forth with our armies. You make us turn back from the enemy, and those who hate us take plunder for themselves. You have given us like sheep to be eaten, and have scattered us among the nations. You sell your people for nothing, and you do not ask for a high price. You make us a taunt for our neighbors, a scorn and a derision to those who are around us. You make us a byword among the nations, a shaking of the head among the people. My confusion is before me all day, and the shame of my face has covered me, because of the voice of him who taunts and blasphemes, because of the enemy and avenger. All this has come upon us, yet we have not forgotten you, nor have we been false to your covenant. Our heart is not turned back, nor our steps departed from your way. Though you have crushed us in the place of jackals, and covered us with the shadow of death, if we have forgotten the name of our God, or stretched out our hands to a strange God, would not God search this out? For he knows the secrets of the heart. For your sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Awake, why do you sleep, O Lord? Arise, do not cast us off forever. Why do you hide your face, and forget our affliction and our oppression? For our soul is bowed down to the dust. Our belly cleaves to the earth. Arise for our help, and redeem us for the sake of your loving kindness. So, clearly there, David is describing the righteous remnant, and describing how they suffer, right, despite their righteousness. Okay, so it's nearly a one-to-one. It's nearly a one-to-one of Isaiah 53. Except this is coming from really the perspective of the remnant itself, whereas Isaiah 53 is coming from the perspective of those who are causing the suffering. So I would really suggest everyone to read Psalm 44. Like, as I was reading, you can see the parallels. You can see the lambs led to slaughter, and killed all the day long, for, face turned away, etc. So I would really suggest that everyone read Isaiah 53 and Psalm 44 almost next to each other, right? And understand that the righteous remnant is what's being described in both. So let's move on. The land of the living. Okay, in Psalm 27:13 we see, were it not that I believe I should see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart, and wait on the Lord. Land of the living is used. Eretz Achayim. Okay? Ezekiel 32:23. Their graves are set in the sides of the pit, and her company is around her grave, all of them slain, fallen by the sword, which struck terror in the land of the living. So it's not necessarily stating there that the land of the living, and we're going to get into it, it's not necessarily stating there that the land of the living means being alive, right? Because it's describing the sword. The sword is what struck terror in the land of the living. So as we move forward, we're going to see what exactly does the land of the living mean. Psalm 142:1, a maskil of David, a prayer when he was in the cave, right? So he's now in a cave, hiding from Shaul, right? We understand that the cave he was hiding in was actually a Canaanite city, okay? It says, I cry to the Lord with my voice. With my voice I make supplication to the Lord. I pour out my complaint before him. I declare my trouble before him. When my spirit is faint inside me, you know my path. In the path where I walk, they have secretly laid a snare for me. I look on my right hand and behold, but there is no man who knows me. No refuge remains to me. No man cares for my soul. I cry to you, O Lord. I say, you are my refuge and my portion in the land of the living. Attend to my cry, for I am bought very low. Save me from my persecutors, for they are too strong for me. Bring my soul out of prison, that I may give thanks to your name. The righteous shall surround me, for you shall deal bountifully with me. So what is he really saying? Okay, and I'm going to give a basic understanding of what the land of the living is, and then I'm going to cite a bunch of sources that say the same. So the land of the living is actually a conventional way to talk about the land of Israel. Okay, so we understand he's dwelling in a Canaanite city, hiding in a cave, right? As we delve deeper, we're going to see that it's umbilically connected to the temple, or in his case, the tabernacle, and divine service regarding the land of the living, right? The presence of God. And he's currently cut off from that. He's currently hiding in a cave and really can't go out in public. So the land of the living is a conventional way to talk about the land of Israel. Okay? And as we move on, we're going to see that this is the case. And here, even Christians agree, except in Isaiah 53. So this is actually a quote directly from Got Questions Ministries, a very common website on the internet. You can ask them questions and they'll give you Christian scriptural answers. So if you bring up the land of the living, this is actually, or my portion, this is exactly what they'll say, which means they agree. Okay, so it reads, when David described the Lord as my portion in the land of the living, he used an adapted version of a long-standing tradition from the tribe of Levi. God divided and distributed the promised land among the 12 tribes of Israel, but the Levites were not given a share. You see Deuteronomy 10:8 and 9. Instead, they were set apart to tend to the Ark of the Covenant and serve in the tabernacle. As priests, they were to be supported by a share of the people's offerings. Traced back to the Levite tradition, the land of the living refers to the land of Israel. Remember, people, this is a Christian source. Okay? I didn't write this. This is directly from a Christian source. It refers to the territory God gave as an inheritance to all the tribes except Levi. With no physical land to claim as a source of provision, the Levites professed, I have no other support for my existence but the help that comes from you, O God. The Psalm of Asaph apprehends the sentiment, whom have I in heaven but you, and earth has nothing I desire beside you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. So, like I said, this is a mainstream Christian source, and they agree that the land of the living, via the Jewish worldview, right, means the land of Israel. So only in Isaiah 53 does it not, in their idea. So I think that's very important, that I'm not building up an argument, not building up a straw man here and toppling it, but rather I'm even using their own sources to show that they understand that the land of the living means the land of Israel in Tanakh. Except when it doesn't for them, right? So what does Tanakh mean? And he's even saying this is directly coming from David. That's what David meant when he says that you are my portion in the land of the living. This author of this Christian article understands that God, right, the provider, the one who gives provision, is the one who provides for Israel in the land of Israel, right? We even see historical accounts that Israel does not give forth fruit or so on and so forth. It's not easy to farm. It only gives forth fruit when the Jews are living in it. It's a living land. That's part of the convention is that the land is alive, basically. And yeah, so if David felt that way, and we understand that Isaiah comes from the house of David, he was a descendant of the house of David. I mean, it's pretty clear to understand that he would share that same worldview of his ancestor and understand the language of his ancestor, right? So, like I said, that was from a Christian source. I didn't write that. They too agree that the land of the living in Tanakh means the land of Israel. Okay? So moving on, Psalm 116:8. For you have saved my soul from death, my eyes from tears, and my feet from falling. I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. Once again, same thing. Meaning in the land of Israel. When I'm in the land of Israel, I will walk before the Lord, right? I will before, off in Tanakh, in conventional language, normally means like in front of. I will walk in front of the Lord in the land of the living. Rashi understands that to be the land of Israel, where the temple is, right? Where the tabernacle is, where the Shekhinah is, right? Where the presence of God is. I kept faith even when I said, I am greatly afflicted. I said in my haste, all men are false. How shall I repay the Lord for his benefits toward me? I will raise up a cup of salvation and call upon the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows to the Lord now in the presence of all his people. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his pious ones. Psalm 19:71. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. So I brought that passage up for a very specific reason, because afflicted in that passage is the same word as it is in Isaiah 53. So what David is saying is that when he is oppressed, when he's afflicted, when he's going through things, it's good for him in the long run because it gets him closer to the Torah, right? He learns the Torah, does the Torah, because that's one of the punishments, right? You turn from my Torah, and I will kick you out. And when you return, when you repent, and when you keep my commandments again, I'll bring you back, right? So we see here that affliction from his enemies leads to a heightened learning of Torah and a return to the Torah, which is exactly the message of the suffering servant, right? So let's continue on. Isaiah 38:11, this is Hezekiah. I said, I shall not see the Lord in the land of the living. I shall behold no more with the inhabitants of the world. So that was from the same book. That's Isaiah 38. It's just a different context. This is Hezekiah speaking. And Targum Jonathan, Aramaic translation / commentary from the 1st century. This guy was a student of Hillel, right? Hillel died in the year 11. So this is at least a generation or two before Jesus even hits the scene, right? So how did Targum Yonasan understand this? And by extension, Hillel. So the leader of the Sanhedrin, meaning like the top, this would have been disseminated as the Jewish understanding, right? How did he render this? He says, I thought I shall not appear again before the terrible God, or the mighty God, in the land of the house of his Shekhinah, just like I said before, in which is length of life. So what did I say before? That the place where the temple is, the place where the tabernacle is, that is the land of the living. And there is only one place where a temple to God can stand, and that is in Israel. Right? Has nothing to do with simply just being alive. Has to do with the living land and where the presence of God resides. Okay? And I shall no more serve before him. Remember before, I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. Congruency. It's parallel. This is how they understood it. 1st century, before Jesus. Right? This predates Jesus, this understanding here. I mean, naturally, it goes all the way back to Isaiah. But what I'm saying is, there are Christians who say that Rashi invented this interpretation. Well, no. You have 1st century sources that predate Jesus that believe this, right? From whence shall you go forth unto all the inhabitants of the earth? Neither shall I dwell in Jerusalem, my holy city. My habitation is cut down. Okay, so Jerusalem, Israel, the land of the living, the temple, it's all connected, and it's all the context of what's going on. And now we're going to read Targum Yonasan on Isaiah 53:8, which is the land of the living verse in Isaiah 53. So how did Targum Yonasan, first century, remember, before Jesus, how did he understand this? He shall gather our captives from affliction and pain, regather the exiles. And who shall be able to narrate the wonderful works which shall be done for us in his days? He shall remove the rule of the nations from the land of Israel. The sins which my people have committed have come upon them. So what is that saying? Once again, the land of the living. He was cut off from the land of the living, which means he was exiled out of Israel, right? Meaning the righteous remnant, Israel, was cut off from the land of Israel, which is the land of the living. And at the end of days, right, we have to understand that it's the kings of nations that are speaking. At the end of days, Israel will regain its sovereignty in the land of the living and will once again be redeemed, have salvation, and be a sovereign nation under the leadership of, King Messiah, of course, right? The Mashiach, and of course God at the head. So that's how Yonasan understood this. Targum Jonathan. That's how it's understood here, is that it's all about Israel. It's about the exile and the returning of the exile and the disbelief of the nations at the end of days when this all occurs. Okay, so let's move on. So the sages taught the following. Reish Lakish said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, the land of Israel is called the land of the living. So once again, these are very early rabbis. I mean, 1st and 2nd century here. And it's baseline understanding that the land of the living is a conventional way to say Israel. Yet don't people die there as well? Here living means at the time of the resurrection of the dead, during the advent of Mashiach, all those buried in Israel be brought back to life, even Yerovam the son of Nevat and his cohorts. Even though they have sinned exceedingly, nonetheless their iniquities have been extracted from them. This is known from the words of Rabbi Yehuda bar Eli, who says that 7 years the land of Israel will be burnt with fire and sulfur as is stated. Sulfur and salt have burnt the entire land. Deuteronomy 29:22. During those years is when God punishes Yerovam and his cronies. Yet afterwards they will revert to life in the days of Mashiach. What has saved them from purgatory was their burial in Israel. As it is written, the land shall atone for his people. That's from Deuteronomy 32:43. And you can find that in Pesachta Rabbah and Yalkut Am Psalms, page 126. So clearly, millennia ago, centuries ago, the understanding of what the land of the living means is the land of Israel. Okay? Continuing on. They are also called my children. This is a quote by Rabbi Natan Shapira. And the children of the living God, by virtue of the name of the land, the supernal land of the living, in Hebrew, Eretz Hachayim Elion. Once again, Jewish understanding, the land of the living means Israel. To quote Rabbi Aaron Moss, Israel is a land with a soul of its own. It is the Holy Land, the place of divine blessing. If Israel finds you worthy, she shares her blessing with you. Remember how I said that when the Jews are in the land, it gives forth its fruit. And no matter how hard life gets there, you will feel at home. But if you are undeserving of her holiness, you won't feel settled there for long. So once again, stating that it's a living land, okay? Land of the living. Very important to understand what Isaiah is saying. It's not simply saying he's going to die. It's saying that the remnant, this entity which is being spoken about in Isaiah 53, is cut off from the land of the living. Not necessarily killed, of course, but exiled from the land of the living. And here we say, cut off versus restored to the land. Ezekiel 37, starting verse 11. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. We are clean cut off. Cut off there being the same wording as in Isaiah 53. Therefore prophesy and say to them, Thus says the Lord God, Behold all my people. I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves, and bring you into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am the Lord, when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up from your graves. And I shall put my spirit in you, and you shall live. And I shall place you in your own land. And you shall know that I, the Lord, have spoken it, and performed it, says the Lord. So to truly understand that, you need some understanding from the tradition, which we won't go into. But just know that the idea there is it is a metaphor for the exile of the 10 northern tribes. And what it's saying is that even though they are cut off from Israel, right, ultimately they will be regathered and put back into their own land. It's quite clear. And notice how they are dead and they are resurrected and brought back to their own land. Land of the living, right? 2 Chronicles 26:21. And Uzziah, the king who was a leper to the day of his death, and lived in the house of separation, being diseased, for he was cut off from the house of the Lord. And Jotam his son was over the king's house, judging the people of the land. Once again, cutting off, it has to do with being exiled from a certain place, right? Uzziah, he lit incense, right? He did the wrong thing. He tried to, as the king, take part in the temple service, which only the priests could do, and Saras showed up on his forehead, right? So it says he was cut off from the house of the Lord. Very similar. We understand that the land of the living it's umbilically connected to the temple and the Shekhinah and the Mishkan. These things are all factored in together. So if he's cut off from the temple, in essence, it's no different than the exile of, just like we saw in Ezekiel 37 and so on. And what's more interesting is he actually had to live in a graveyard. He had to live amongst the dead. Very interesting. Israel, the living land. Psalm 85:2. Lord, you have been favorable to your land. You have brought back the captivity of Jacob. You have forgiven the iniquity of your people. You have pardoned all their sin. Selah. Once again, the land, exile, captivity, they're all umbilically connected. The land is the inheritance, right? It's the promised land. So it's the reward, right? If you're cut off, what is worse than that? What is worse than losing your temple, right? These things are all umbilically connected in Tanakh. Leviticus 26:34. Then the land will be appeased regarding its sabbaticals. During all the days that it remains desolate while you are in the land of your enemies, the land will rest and thus appease its sabbaticals. Once again, it's a land that's living. It only will give forth its fruit to the Jews, granted that they are keeping the Torah, right? Otherwise, they are cut off from it. And of course, that they maintain the Shemitah year, the sabbaticals. And we do even understand that the first exile to Babylon had to do with not keeping the sabbatical year, letting the land lie fallow. So this living land, it has a very important role to play in Tanakh, and with the Jewish people, their reward and their punishment, right? Being cut off from it is a very, very harsh punishment. Okay, moving on. The nation of Israel described as sheep. So Ezekiel 36, right? Like we saw with Jeremiah in the beginning, like we saw with Psalm 44, sheep led to slaughter. It's common, okay? Ezekiel 36, therefore, thus says the Lord God, I have raised my hand. Surely the nations that are around you shall bear their own insult. But you, O mountains of Israel, you shall shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit to my people Israel. Here we go. The land of Israel again, in this living role, giving forth its fruit when only the Jews are in the land. For they will soon be coming. For behold, I am for you, and I will turn to you, and you shall be tilled and sown. And I will multiply men upon you, all the house of Israel, all of it. And the cities shall be inhabited, and the ruined places shall be rebuilt. I will multiply upon you man and beast, and they shall increase and bring fruit. And I will cause you to be inhabited as in your former times, and will do good to you, more good to you than ever before. And you shall know that I am the Lord. This is speaking to the land. And it will cause men to walk upon you, my people Israel, and they shall possess you, and you shall be their inheritance. And you shall no longer bereave them of children. Thus says the Lord God, this also I will let the house of Israel ask me to do for them. I will increase their men like a flock, like the flock of sacrifices, meaning sheep, like the flock of Jerusalem in her solemn feasts. When the Jews come back for feasts, there are offerings offered, which means the city is bustling with men and sacrificial animals, right? Shall the ruined cities be filled with flocks of men, and they shall know that I am the Lord. The people of Israel were likened to sheep, flocks of sheep, okay? Hadrian said to Rabbi Yehoshua, How great is the one little lamb who can exist among 70 wolves? Rabbi Yehoshua responded, how great is its shepherd who saves it, protects it, and breaks down its enemies, which is from Midrash Tanchuma Toldot 5. Very interesting. Even non-Jewish people are saying that, Israel is this sheep amongst 70 wolves. A sheep led to slaughter, right? Numbers 27:17. Who may go out before them, and who may go in before them, and who may lead them out, and who may bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord, meaning the people of Israel, be not as sheep which have no shepherd. 1 Kings 22:17. And he said, I saw all Israel scattered upon the hills, as sheep that have not a shepherd. And the Lord said, these have no master, let them return every man to his house in peace. Over and over and over again. Ezekiel 36:37. I read this one before. This also I will let the house of Israel ask me to do for them, that I will increase their men like a flock. Micah 2:12. I will surely assemble, O Jacob, all of you. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together like sheep. Now this is speaking of the remnant and Jacob together, right? 10 tribes and the righteous remnant, right? Like a flock in the midst of their pasture. They shall make a great noise because of the multitude of men, right? Being multiplied back in their land, right? They come back to the living land. It gives forth its fruit. I mentioned that in the Ezekiel 36 passage. It needs to give forth an abundance because of how multiplied the flock of the people of Israel will be. Okay? Micah 2:12 is saying the same thing. Zechariah 9:16. And the Lord their God shall save them on that day as the flock of his people. And he is the shepherd, of course. For they shall be like the jewels of a crown shining over his land. Once again, the land and the people umbilically connected. Psalm 77:20. Your way was through the sea, and your path through the great waters, and your footsteps were not known. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Over and over again, the people of Israel are described as a flock. So why any different in Isaiah 53? Right? Psalm 78:52. But made his own people to go forth like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. Right? 40 years in the wilderness. Psalm 82. Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock, you who are enthroned upon the cherubim, shine forth. Psalm 107:41. But he raises the poor high out of affliction, and makes his families like a flock. It's the same, once again, the same root for the afflicted in Isaiah 53, and also you have the motif of the Jews as sheep. So over and over and over again, David constantly debunks Christianity. He debunks this understanding of Isaiah 53. So if we're seeing constantly through the Tanakh, I mean, how many verses have I quoted here of the language from Isaiah 53 being used in the way that the Jews describe it? Everywhere in Tanakh, but yet only in Isaiah 53 does it seem to be different. And what's funny is I quoted a Christian source that actually agreed with the Jewish understanding. So let's weigh the odds. If you have hundreds, everywhere in Tanakh across the Torah, I quoted verses from the Torah, the writings, and the prophets. If you have these words being used in that way, right, everywhere, except in one chapter, it just so happens to switch to be about something else. I mean, come on, let's weigh it here. If it's 100 to 1, I'm being generous. If it's 100 to 1, I'm going with the 100. Right? That's context. That's understanding what the language of Tanakh is. Okay? 2 Chronicles 16. Then he said, I saw all Israel scattered upon the mountains, as sheep that have no shepherd. And the Lord said, these have no master. Let them return, therefore, every man to his house in peace. Now we're actually going to talk about some New Testament, which is interesting. So Jesus relays that the message of Isaiah 53 applies to his own Jewish followers in the first century. Matthew 10:16 reads, Behold, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Remember what Hadrian said in that midrash we read? So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Now isn't that interesting? If Jesus knew that the serpent in the garden was the devil, why would he tell his followers to act that way? Does that mean Jesus is telling his followers to act like devils? Or did Jesus have some semblance of Jewish understanding and know that that's simply just a cunning, smart creature that was used to exact the free will of Adam and Eve? Right? Jesus said it, not me. I didn't write it. Be wise as serpents. Be cunning as serpents. Right? Be cunning as snakes. He's not equating that snake to the devil. Which would, if we we could understand that he doesn't see the Genesis serpent as the devil. Right? He's simply just saying that serpents are cunning. Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to courts and flog you in their synagogues. And you will be dragged before the governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them and the Gentiles. So he's saying that his own followers, his own Jewish followers, by the nations, right, before them and the Gentiles, that governors and kings, that's talking about non-Jewish people also, that his followers will suffer at their hands, bear iniquities, right? So he's even relaying the suffering servant message about them. Okay, so that means it can't exclusively be about him if it's about his followers also, right? His contemporary followers had no idea that Isaiah 53 was exclusively about a suffering Messiah. We looked into other first century sources that understood Isaiah 53 to be about the righteous remnant of Israel, namely Targum Yonasan. First and second century rabbis that knew the land of Israel was the land of the living. So let's see what his own followers thought about Isaiah 53. Matthew 16:21. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and that he would be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, Far be it from you, Lord. That shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me. For you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of men. Then Jesus told his disciples, If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whomever would save his life would lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So Peter takes him aside and says, Hey man, how could you die? You're the Messiah, right? You're supposed to usher in the kingdom of God, right? On this earth. He had no inkling. He had no preconceived notion that Isaiah 53 was exclusively about a suffering, dying man-God. Right? We saw that other contemporary sources felt the same way. Okay? So even his own followers didn't feel that way. It's obvious. Okay? So, all right, everybody. I hope that helps. Things to remember. Land of the living doesn't mean to be alive in this life. It means the land of Israel, right? It's umbilically connected to the people, and to be cut off from the land, to be exiled is a very important factor in the suffering. Okay, the people of Israel over and over and over again throughout Tanakh, I quoted, multiple places, are referred to as flocks, as sheep, led to slaughter. In the preface, we mentioned that other prophets are described in the exact same suffering way, which means that Isaiah 53 can't be exclusive to Jesus because the exact same language is used about them. And like I said here at the end, is even in the New Testament, Jesus applies Isaiah 53 to his own followers, that they too will suffer, be led like sheep to the slaughter, and suffer at the hands of men. And further, final point, as I had just said, is his own followers did not, if we do understand that they were observant Jews, they did not understand, they had no preconceived notion of the point of the Messiah to be to suffer and die. Okay? So I hope that helped everybody. yeah, keep on the lookout for those things I mentioned at the beginning of the show coming down the pipe. And until next time, everyone, this was the Exodus Project. I'm Steve Eisenhower, and we'll see you next time.